Welcome to the Carolina Geek Podcast. I'm John Thomas Hill, and we're going to take a little sidestep away from the traditional content of this channel to talk about MTV. And you're saying MTV is not really a geek channel, but it's part of pop. We do kind of do pop culture here for a bit. And for those of us with a certain age, we all know about MTV. MTV used to be the really cool network that you would watch hours upon end to watch music videos back when music videos were a thing. It is, if for those people who don't understand what MTV was like in the 1980s, it's hard to explain. MTV was the biggest pop culture influence of that decade, by far. Bigger than Madonna, bigger than Michael Jackson, bigger than anybody else. Bigger than any movie. MTV was that big. It started off small in 1981. This is the 40th anniversary coming up in August. And it grew fast. To the point where MTV in the mid to late 1980s was the kingmaker of pop stars. And there were plenty of knockoff. I mean, I remember TBS used to do a weekend music video show, late nights, which was actually pretty cool itself. NBC did Friday night videos. There were syndicated music video shows. WBTV used to do a little music video thing. WSPA used to do a country music version of it back in the day. Because I think they had it through Whistle 100 Country Music, whatever that channel is. But I'm not a big country music fan. And there were a lot of... The 80s were a great time for pop culture, but this all started because of MTV. And music went from being a radio-oriented industry to television-oriented industry. And it blew up big time. Cable came along. You could watch all the MTV videos you wanted to. Plenty of people chilled out at home during the 80s watching that. You think having your kids on their tablets were bad enough back these days, constantly on the smartphones and tablets these days? What about MTV back in the day? I remember that. It was all great, but the problem with MTV was when you're constantly programming music videos, you don't know where the ads are going to go. And they had to eventually break down and start programming shows around the music videos to where they could put ad spots in. And eventually they started doing the MTV Video Music Awards. They started doing their own specific shows like 120 Minutes, like the MTV Video Metal Show. I can't remember what they called it. They did the Yo MTV Raps, which was a response to the criticism from the African American community that all MTV was white people music, which was valid. If you read, let me get the book name. I think I've got it still. Let's see. Do I have that book? I have it on my Apple book, I think. If not, I'll look it up. There's a great book that I read once about MTV. Gotta find it. Is it on? It's I Want My MTV, The Uncensored Story of the Music Revolution. Let me go back to give you the name of the authors. Rob Tannenbaum and Craig Marks. I Want My MTV, The Uncensored Story of the Music Video Revolution. You want to know how great MTV was read this book. It is not for the feeble. Yeah, there's a lot of there's some naughty language in this. Yeah, there's some stuff in here. You'll find the rise and eventual decline of MTV. The golden years of MTV are the first decade of MTV from 1981 to 1991. When it started going downhill was when they got into what is now called reality TV. The Real World, which is next year going to be later this year, because it came out in 1992, but was originally filmed in 1990. I think parts were filmed in 1991. The problem started when reality television became a thing. There's always been documentaries, which I consider the real reality TV. And even then, not all documentaries are objective. Plenty can be slanted. Dinesh D'Souza, Michael Moore, you hearing me? Maybe we'll get on that topic one of these days. But anyway, back to MTV. The Real World started the decline. But it wasn't the original pebble that became the big snowball. And not all of it was bad. Remote Control was a game show MTV did, and that was pretty cool. There were some comedy stuff they did, some animation stuff they did that was pretty cool. But it's when they had to start making their own programs that started the decline. The Real World was part of it. Beavis and Butthead was the second. As much as people may have liked Beavis and Butthead back in the day, I never really cared for it because it was kind of lame. For those of you who may not know what Beavis and Butthead was or is, basically it was cartoon characters that commentated on music videos by basically trashing music videos, and then there were two high school losers that it's one of those shows that you might want to watch just to get a basic point of reference, but some of you may like it, some of you may not like it. I always thought it was kind of lame. It had its moments, but it's one of those things that, yeah, the longer it stayed on, and it just reminds me, I got to do a show about The Simpsons, South Park, and Family Guy, and why they've stayed on way too long. We may do that sometime down the road. But anyhow, back to MTV. The Real World started the decline, Beavis and Butthead started it, and then they brought in Road Rules. The reason Real World and Road Rules and Beavis and Butthead started to decline was because they could air them all the time. Music videos are not expensive, are not cheap. You've got music rights, you've got to pay the musicians, you've got to pay the producers. It went from being a cool idea to where now the bills are coming due. It's becoming corporate. It's becoming, hey, we can make money off this. And then, of course, some cable systems decided they didn't want MTV. And this is the thing I'm going to talk about locally. Northland Cable in 1995 made a decision to get rid of MTV. They claimed there was a survey circulated around that said people didn't like MTV. And there were some people in the community who were glad it was gone. But the real reason was MTV wanted too much money. And Northland Cable didn't want to pay that. So to give them the excuse to drop it, they basically made up a survey, which to this day, I have yet to meet anybody that actually got that survey. And they said, well, we're going to drop it because too many people responded to this survey negatively. They were not honest with their audience. Took me a while to figure that out. I can't, even to this day, tell you who told me what. It's a classic case of, I knew a guy who knew a guy, or I knew a guy that knew a gal, or I knew a gal that knew a guy, and all this. Basically, it's a situation where there's enough. I don't know the whole story, but I know enough of the story to basically tell you that, yeah, they lied about it. I can't go to court and say they didn't. They did lie about it, but I can guarantee you it's pretty much they did. Which, in retrospect, it was only gone for 6 years. In 2000 when they brought it back, and then, yeah. 6 years later, and it was basically garbage. Lots of road rules, lots of real world, and over the course of the 2000s, it became even more and more about reality TV and less about music videos. To the point where it is irrelevant. Unless you love reality TV. Nowadays, it's definitely in African American culture. Which I don't have a problem with. I'm not watching anymore because I'm too old for their audience. I've aged out of their audience. But a lot of the stuff they have on there is bland. It may be popular to a younger generation, but to me it's sort of unoriginal. It's stuff that you could have done in the 80s. You probably did in the 80s. What do they call it? It's the rap battle kind of show. Is it Wild and Out? That's been going on since the 90s. On WGN, they used to have this show on late at night. That's where I found out about Jim Brewer. They were basically doing rap battles. Yo mama jokes and all that. Something new. I mean, this is the same network that brought us Jackass, which was funny for like a few episodes, and then it became regular redundant. It's kind of like, what else can they do? I mean, what can they? It gets to the point, and now, how many versions of Real World have you done? Road Rules has gone by the wayside. I don't know. I've not watched it in years. They had reality dramas, which were basically, they had real people living out their lives almost like they were doing a soap opera, and it's like, yeah, that's healthy. They made celebrities out of people that you don't know why they're celebrities. They were on a show. It's like how Bravo made or whatever it was. Bravo, it's on, what the Kardashians are on. What network's the Kardashians on? And I gotta do this show one of these days about how networks that used to have a specific identity, like MTV, like the Learning Channel, like Discovery, like the History Channel, like A&E, that used to have a distinct identity, they don't anymore. Do you know what TLC stands for? The Learning Channel. It was an educational channel. What do you see on there all the time now? Tell me, what do you see on there all the time? Reality crap. That's not. Let me go back a bit in the history of television. This isn't nothing new. there's a show on TLC called Say Yes to the Dress. This is not exactly unusual. They're shows, like they used to call them lifestyle shows, where they cater to a female audience during the day, when back in the day women generally stayed home, not like it is today, and it's not been that way since the 70s and 80s. But back during that time, from say the 50s up to the 80s, and even to an extent into the 90s, to a certain extent, daytime television was catered toward females because women generally stayed at home back then in the house, or the perception was there that they did. The reality was quite different. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, things changed. More women got in the workplace, and the whole thing, well, that's why soap operas are no longer a thing. MTV became just another network. Reality shows, yeah, they got some music in them, but you're not watching music videos all the time. Do they still do those like little blocks during? I mean, I think they used to have MTV Classic, but now they've got that blocked up. And even then, I think VH1 is practically MTV. VH1 used to be the light rock of MTV. And they had a moment where they were kind of cool. Then they went by the wayside and became just another network. VH1 Classic, I think that's the channel, used to be kind of cool. Now they've become... So it's... MTV was great in its day. It was born in an era where networks were specializing, where cable networks were born and died, but some stuck it out. USA Network and TBS were two juggernauts back in the day. You had the Learning Channel, which was pretty cool. Used to have some very cool stuff on it. A&E was great. They had a lot of cool stuff on there. Now it's reality. Live PD. What is it? What is it? The Duck Show. The one with the Robertsons. I can't think of it. But it's one of those things about these networks, and I'm of a certain age, I remember how great they used to be. And then, as media consolidation happened, the push to kind of attract a bigger, wider audience, yeah. It eventually led to where we're at right now, unfortunately. And what is sad is that it took what was special about MTV away. And it didn't just do it overnight. You could see the bleeding happen in the 90s. And it continued throughout the 2000s. What made MTV special, what made MTV unique and cool, now it's become just like stuff you'd find anywhere else. In my honest opinion, they're trying to be cool like BET, but BET's got them beat. BET knows how to do it. I mean, even Fuse used to be a cool music channel, and they've become practically a movie channel now. So, in retrospect, MTV had one decade of really being cool, and the 90s it just went died a slow death. Real World began the start of it. Beavis and Butthead. There was some stuff that was actually pretty cool. There was half-hour comedy hours actually really cool. But it went away from its original mission statement. And now it's just another network. Find content that somebody will watch, sit on their butt and watch for hours on end, which was, ironically enough, what MTV was to begin with. But the problem is, it's nothing new. Nothing new at all. Part of a greater problem with cable networks. There's such a vast array of them trying to compete for the very same audiences that in many ways they have signed their own death warrants. Cable and satellite is a dinosaur. It's just not dead yet. With streaming services, with everybody on their tablets and smartphones and with their smart TVs and such, cutting their cords and all that, the cable and satellite industry is dying, just like the video store industry is dead. It's done. Why go rent a movie when I can get on Netflix and watch it? Why watch a music video when I can watch it on YouTube? Or do they still have Vivo? I think Vivo is still a thing. I know YouTube Music's still a thing. The internet has changed so much, and MTV may not make it to its 50th birthday in 2031. It's lucky it's made it to 2021. The media landscape in the next 10 years is going to change. A lot of networks are going to die. Either they're going to die in the sense that they're going to be transformed into streaming services, merged into streaming services, or they're going to die outright. What made them special at one time is gone. MTV used to have great... MTV is where I found out about Monty Python. Now it's got the same garbage. Nothing unique, nothing really groundbreaking. They had some stuff for a while. In the 90s, that wasn't all bad. They had some groundbreaking stuff. The State, Upright Citizens Brigade, I believe that was MTV, if I'm not mistaken. Plenty of stuff. But it slowly bled out as they realized, instead of programming this show and this show and this show, let's just show 6 hours straight of MTV Road Rules or Real World that's been watched billions of times. So, yeah, this is not your traditional geek podcast. But MTV was once great. It was great. Man, it was great back in the 80s. Back when music was really cool, but at the same time, the very things that made pop music and many other music genres become rather bland started in the 80s. The corporatization of music and movies and television, to where they're not seen as entertainment, they're seen as content and revenue generators. And that's the problem. I could go on and on about this, about how the really cutting edge stuff is going on Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu and whatnot, and the broadcast networks are... I want to tell you the God's honest truth. I have not, beyond sports and occasional news, I haven't watched a show on broadcast television, not a drama or a sitcom, probably for the better part of a decade. Maybe even longer. And I haven't watched MTV beyond just a glimpse here or there in the same amount of time. I've heard about it. I've read plenty about it. And it's just like, it's not special anymore. It's just a bunch of shows trying to create this reality TV people into stars and all this, which they are to a certain extent. But music's not special anymore. It's pop music has become too corporate. Rap's become too corporate. Country certainly has become too corporate. Country today is basically pop music with a twang. And I'm not a country music fan. So MTV exists, but that's about it. The great dreams it started out with, unfortunately has died. So, God bless them. They were great, and now there's just another network. And I've said that plenty of times already. I know some of you probably don't like this show because I get on a roll and just keep talking. This is an audio blog. It's not a professional podcast, for Pete's sake. I don't get any money off this. So, anyhow, that's it. That's all I'm going to talk about. Folks, have a great day. Good night. Good luck. And may the good news be yours.